going to spotlight myself. You sit up straight, please. Draw your spine up. Release the limbs down. However you're sitting, observe. We just had a discussion about zones. Don't start chanting those syllables just yet. What you should do instead is begin listening. So the attention all the way to the innermost ear descends and listens. It's listening for what's happening. The yogis will say the vibration of your life force, just your existence, creates vibration. That vibration is subtly or grossly audible. Listen. Join your palms. So don't be listening for that syllable wherever you're focused, because that is the mind projecting, the mind sending out a sound. Instead, listen, be receptive, take information in. Don't put information out. This inward direction of the mind is the yogic direction. Pay homage to this practice and to that root teacher, Patanjali. Keep listening as you bow your head. Release your hands, raise your head, and open your eyes. So it being the end of the month, we're going to have an approach to pranayama, to breath awareness. So I was talking about this in the philosophy class yesterday, that pranayama is essentially a sound-based process. So you are to pay attention to various things about the breath before you get to listening to it. You have to sort of be able to observe it in any capacity. And also, before you begin pranayama, you need the skill to distribute that prana. You need some awareness of the position of the prana in the body, where it moves, where it doesn't, how it moves, its sense of direction as you breathe. You need your awareness of how your position, legs this way, affects the movement of prana. We use asana to kind of gain a measure of control over all kinds of aspects of the breath. So let's get started. I'm going to assume you've taken whatever support you need for these poses. Toes together, knees apart, take Virasana. Now, each pose, we're going to make a couple of changes like we usually do, nothing out of the ordinary. But I'm going to ask you to shift your focus to, how shall we say, use your position. That means what the legs are doing, what the arms are doing from the root of the arm in the spine and the neck, the root of the leg in the spine and hip, right? What the limbs do to affect the breath in a couple of positions. First one is this, just sit up. Now, some of you have knee pains. Just observe what that pain is doing to the breath. It limits it. Now, solve that pain problem, add more height. One of the ways you know you're getting an improvement in your pose is when you make the improvement. The telltale is the breath gets more penetrating. The breath occupies a little more real estate. When you're genuinely comfortable, that breath can move down and up, left and right, front and back. It has dimension. Only at the end, only after you get these basic dimensions do you start prolonging the breath. Watch as you go forward. Now you just take your basic pose, rest on your hips, fold forward. Don't take props, just see what happens. Maybe your head doesn't go to the floor. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, I mean, whatever props you already started with, don't add other stuff, just go forward, right? You keep the experiment, you just go forward. Now, see what that breath does or did in the act of going forward. Did it get irregular? Once you're, now, if your head is not supported, support it. And observe the change. Now, the posture is the interaction of the body, the limbs, the organs of action in particular, but working from there through and through body, mind, that is thoughts, emotions, reactivity, responsivity, and breath, body, mind, breath. So you want to use this body to expand the access of the breath, the prana, to all parts. Come up to dog pose. In other words, don't just do the pose for the pose. Do the pose for the breath. So you observe if those legs or arms are not working to help the breath, if the arms and legs are not working, let's say, if they're lazy, you will feel that breath becomes more confined. And if you stretch the leg properly, lengthening those bones toward every joint, stabilizing every joint, and being able to expand every joint, that gives you space. Now, come out briefly, just rest. And watch the camera. This is shoulder width, right? So I want you to turn out and go a bit wider. Maybe make it so that if you're on a sticky mat, your maybe outer fingers poke off the edges of the mat, so it's wide, but not super wide. Sticky mat, fingers hanging off, 45-degree angle. Go up. What is the effect? Everything I'm doing is for the breath, so I don't have to ask that question. It's implicit. It's part of what we're doing. When you change the arms in a way that really helps you roll the triceps and broaden those top shoulders, does it not help the breath in the upper chest, shoulders, neck? Come out. Join your hands to each other. They're so close now that you're going to have to bend your elbows to get your head in. Don't join your feet. Use them for balance. Something else happens. Maybe worse, maybe better. Some of you may feel somewhere there's more room that was not there before. Some of you will feel less room. Some of you will feel both. Somewhere there's more, somewhere there's less. Come out. Do you get how simple alterations can change the way, can change position? That means where the breath lands, where the breath is. You might say there's a container for the breath, which is inside your body, and it's a different shape, right? It's not the shape of your body, the shape of the breath in your body. Feel what you've got here. It's not, this breath doesn't occupy you in the same way. There's an area somewhere in the middle or the up or the down where the breath is full. But most of us don't get the same penetration everywhere. Is that true? Yeah. So straighten your arms up. The breath changes. Straighten your arms up and grip your arms like you're trying to act afraid, the breath closes. Stretch your arms up like you're happy. The breath changes. Come out. My advice is stay happy. All right. Trikonasana. Same observations. Adding the happiness factor. It's really very useful. This is the built-in benefit of opening these joints in the upper chest. The hidden benefit is happiness is much easier to just find. So watch this breath as you go. There are more people than care to admit who find Tadasana claustrophobic, limiting. And it's the way we do it. It's not the pose. The pose should be like an expression, an outward expansion of self. So if you feel like whatever instruction you're following, whatever the teacher said about compacting the hips, does it mean compact the breath? Do what you are doing to make the breath occupy more real estate. So you are checking systematically, can I at least get that breath to stay in the pelvis? This is a very useful place to start. Okay, take the arms up. Okay, make your legs lazy briefly. Just drop the muscle, see what happens to the breath. Now rebuild the action of the leg in for the breath, not for the leg. Don't just grip the leg because you're supposed to grip the leg. Grip the leg in order to open up some space, some dimension. That thigh goes back so that the breath can go back. That leg stretches down so that the abdomen can release up. The breath should not be like pulled narrow like taffy. The breath widens and fills the space. Exhale, come down. The outer body may get narrow feeling, but the inner body does not. Okay, I put my foot down about that. Your goal is to have prana available in every compartment, structural and functional compartment. Trikonasana, take your feet apart. Notice the immediate change in breathing. Now you can make this a claustrophobic experience, obeying only the engagement instructions. You have to balance those with expansion at the joints. Turn the right leg. Keep the breath deep, wide, long. As you bend from the hips, as you lengthen your right thigh to the hip socket, you're doing it for the breath. Take your hand to the chair, keeping the armpit open. Don't come in narrow. Even if you come up on your fingertips, keep the armpit open. Now, we're just going to experiment. You go as far as you can. Take the elbow down if you can. Observe the breath. So I'm going to say, keep as much as you can, but everybody, as you come down in the pose, you're going to notice the confinement or the alteration of the breath. Okay, so widen your stance. I believe that changes things. Also, those for whom this is quite difficult, raise your stance to restore the breath. Put your elbow down is about like going to a medium height brick. Now, stretch this top arm. How's the breath? Lifting that chest, stretching shoulder blade. Take the arm up vertical. Okay, you have a sense that the variations interact with the breath. Now be careful as you come up. Take support of the arms and legs. Turn the feet. Bring the feet together. Those young and sprightly people, feel free to jump the feet together. Watch how that interacts with the breath. Side two, feet apart. Wait, feet together. I'll tell a story. I have, as you know, a volatile nervous system, a tremor. And when I went to India to work with Gita, and I got into the regular classes in the second month only, there was many times where Tadasana was the pose. And she pointed me out in the room and she said, take your feet wider. So what I was doing, my nervous system was extremely wired up, right? So I'm saying, if your breath is irregular, you will notice this. Taking the feet together and being in this kind of Tadasana may not feel like a confinement, but it becomes one. Take your feet apart. Take your feet at least 3 feet apart. Take your back to a wall. Take your hands to your hips and spread the elbows. They shouldn't go back and point your shoulders, poke your shoulders forward. The elbows go wide. I hope you feel the difference in the breath. This part breathes easier. Okay, so Trikonasana. Now, you can come away from the wall or stay at the wall, it's your choice. We're doing this for the breath, not for the structure, the stretch of the legs, the anchoring into the hip joint, the subsequent even expansion of that hip joint. It's all for the breath. Take your hand in close. See what happens. Maybe you don't feel like you're suddenly short of breath, but look at the space, not just in the lungs, but in the joints, in the cells, the whole embodiment. You're going farther, you're going deeper. You're seeing what this big stretch does to this side of the pelvis, what this shortening does to this side, what the shortening here does to your chest breath. How does it compress or push on the throat when you come down low? This is the part that's having the pressure. Why is there trouble here? Widen your stance, lengthen your stance, and come up higher and create space for all compartments equally. If you ask, what's a compartment? A compartment is anything your mind can identify that distinguishes one part from another. Come on, careful. Watch the breath as you proceed. Join the feet. Take take Parakonasana. So, and have support ready, but we're going to do this the opposite way this time. That means we're going to try to go deep in the pose, however slowly, but we're going to more or less straight through, trying to take the hand to the floor and see what happens there. And then we're going to come up to a better place. So my view is, since I keep support behind me, I always put the brick in front. This is not a good idea for the rest of you unless you're at a wall and you really can open against the wall. If the brick's in front, it gives many of us a chance to poke the buttock out. So when you're at the wall, the wall brings your hip forward. So if you can do that, you know what I'm after here. Take your feet apart for the breath. Stretch your arms for the breath. So you got to be inward looking to be seeing this. It's not pranayama yet. This is asana. Exhaling, bend your knee. If the limbs do their job nicely, the breath stays even. Lengthen into the hip socket and expand the joint. Take that hand down, stretch your top limb back, arm back, leg back, lift the chest, hip socket forward. Watch your breath. Some of you need to take a brief look and see that this thigh is horizontal. Take your arm up to the ceiling for the breath. A lot of us pull up so hard, we shorten this lower side. Expand both sides and take the arm overhead. And when you stretch, Stretch the right lung through to the left hand, bottom lung through to the top hand, and come up with respect to the breath. Turn the feet. Move your support if need be. Take side two. I hope that was endurable. If the breath gets very disturbed, confined, arrested, right? If you experience irregularities of breathing, that inhalation and exhalation is against your will, kind of against its will, interrupted, that's a sign that there's a problem you need to solve in how the pose is going. But if the velocity of your breath increases, exhalation first, then inhalation, because there's energy being expended here, that is fine. Velocity, direction, location, that sort of the contact places, direction is, well, you can feel it as the breath moves, there's some direction to it. These things you should be observing and cultivating. Side two, not restriction, not stoppage. You work to use the limbs to increase contact. You are welcome to change the velocity. When you expend more energy, there's absolutely a good reason to exhale more completely. And observe that movement. Each time you change the arm position, each time you change the energy and activity of the leg, the breath responds. Do your work for the breath. And come out carefully. Watch that breath. Turn the feet, bring the feet together. Now, this time, instead of Adho Mukha Svanasana, it'll be a hybrid Prasarita Padottanasana, taking the legs wide apart and going forward to, it's not dog pose because the legs stay back, weight on the heel. And the trunk extends forward, but the hips don't move forward. Keep the weight on the heel. So the width of the leg position promotes spaciousness in the navel region. Like the side walls of the pelvis can relax. The inner musculature of the pelvis, those hip blades are as big as they are because there is a lot of muscle attached to the outside and the inside. So I'm saying lengthen the outer pelvis muscles, those side, back, front pelvis muscles, and widen, relax, release the inner pelvis muscles. That there's muscle that lines the inner wall of the pelvis, the side walls. See where in the spine that breath touches. See where in the spine it does not. Can, by moving the attention of the mind, can you bring breath to that resistant place? Can you lengthen your vertebra, lengthen the pelvis bones, the sacrum, the tailbone, lengthen your bones. Come out slowly. Now, who does headstand? That person should do headstand. Those people against a wall with ropes. You're entirely at your own discretion according to your capacity. Those who do not do headstand directly will do intermittent preparation. You'll take rest because it's not as quieting to the mind. So maybe just for a bit, you can work with shoulder position, walking in, inverting. See, the problem is if you have a tendency to that front hip grip, it's not a pleasant pose till you can get past that. It's in no way contemplative. So when you're done prepping for headstand, halfway through, like maybe 2 minutes from now, 1 minute from now, those who are doing preparation can shift to Supta Virasana with whatever support is appropriate. So you will sit Virasana on a brick or on a bolster. You will get a chair to put behind your chest or a bolster, and you will lie back. So Supta Virasana in its full form, if it were doable, would be flat on the floor. And I suggest most of you take support. Bolster under the back. Some people use bricks. Brick under the chest, brick under the head is a pretty good lift if you're close. If you're not, you need bolsters. Yeah. Now, the idea is to not obstruct the breath in the sacrum, the low back, the usual crimpy places. Lengthen that front thigh. Side pelvis, inner walls of the pelvis. Are you comfy, Chaya? Good. Eventually the arms go overhead, and if your head support becomes unpleasant for that reason, just remove it and extend. Go for space, go for free movement of the breath. Those in the headstand, make some experiments. The main one being to exhale more sharply. That means increase velocity. That's how it becomes sharp. Now, you're listening not to me, but with that inner ear, you're listening to your breath. Yes, Supta Virasana comes after Shirshasana. the way that works for you. I don't mind a bit of work, but I do mind pain. Pain is different from stretching a muscle and easing into the pose. Pain is that joint can't expand. So experiment with taking deeper exhalations. Deeper means more velocity. The duration is going to increase a little bit just because you're really trying to exhale all air. But don't prolong it too much. Just experiment with deeper exhalations. See what happens to the inhalation that follows. Direction, location, its own velocity. And where is the velocity? Where do you feel it pelvically? In the chest, in the throat? Where do you feel the completion of the exhalation? Pelvis, abdomen, chest, throat, head. So you're definitely not trying to hyper or hypoventilate, but you are just seeing that every breath you can do this, finish that exhalation. Then every headstand person come out. Those who just got in Supta Virasana, that's fine. You stay there. Don't change. Those who are just going in, don't do Supta Virasana. Instead, do Supta Parakonasana. You can, if your pose is good, you can work without straps. You might put a blanket to one side and the other. But if you just bring your ankles in and your feet close together, the sticky mat frequently holds the pose quite well. Now you can, again, have blanket support. Those in Supta Virasana, you also come out carefully and change to watch your breath there. Use those hands pressing on the floor to keep that abdomen, pelvis, spinal compartment open. Then you come out and you take the same Supta Parakonasana. Give your knees a chance to straighten carefully. So I'm going to show again the Supta Parakonasana. The buttocks start long, which is not like Supta Virasana. So you get a good deal of length opening out on the sticky mat, and it must be comfortable and breathable. Then you catch your ankles and move those heels together. Your hips are even gonna, see mine, they come up and they come back down with my tailbone magnetizing toward the heels. And after a bit, my arms just sort of work their way out very slowly. And I leave my back on the floor. No adjustments. Once you let those hands go and slide out to the sides. So Chaya, you should try it on the floor unless you know there's just an utter problem with the low back. Because again, breath-wise, it's a much different pose. The direction of the breath. Now, if you can catch those heels and bring them in close and raise up the hips, widen the knees, put the feet together, walk those feet close in as if you want to sit on your heels. So raise your hips then, Chaya, and walk your hands towards your feet. So it's a teeny setu bandha. Good. Now do Parakonasana. Don't let go of your ankles. Knees apart. Work your soles of your feet together. Very compact pose. Your chest is open. The heels don't come away from the hips. Everything is very, very close. And if that's impossible, you just wrap a strap around your ankles and work that way. Anyway, are you comfy? Is your back in any trouble? Good. Now, everybody, don't change the skin on the floor. Just let go of that spine. Your tailbone is going to slowly lengthen towards your heels. And your spine, the rest of your spine is going to slowly lengthen toward the collarbones. And because the skin at the back is tucked, that rib cage is going to change its shape as the spine lengthens. And the breath is going to occupy a different space. Now you can again keep those shoulders and the hips stuck where they are on the sticky mat and just move the arms overhead. You do not lift that shoulder socket from the floor. That shoulder blade remains utterly stuck. Don't shift it. Just take the arms overhead. You could cross your elbows. You could keep your arms straight. Either way. Straight is best unless you don't have the room for that. And observe. Few breaths. Direction. This pose in the pelvis and abdomen, navel region, the pose is asking the breath, arranging, hopefully politely, for that breath to spread, widen. So it's direction. It's really many, many directions, but you feel sort of its special direction in this pose is wide, especially compared to the last pose, Supta Virasana. The breath direction there was much more longitudinal. There is width to it, there is depth to it, but the pose itself encourages that length. Now, if you take your arms horizontally out to the side, instead of overhead. See how that changes things. Straight out, straight away. Like you can bend your elbows if that's it. Leanne, I see there's a wall in the way there. So you can go like this, but let from the shoulder to the elbow come out wide. You know, okay. That's a good choice rather than limiting the arms. Watch your hands too. Because it's felt. See, you feel it, do you not? Your lung feels it. Everybody go right ahead, change one arm only. Breath changes. Make another change, same arm. Breath changes. Changes, if you watch it, changes all the way to the hip. Not just the adjacent regions, but farther afield, their effects. So go back to a symmetrical pose or continue. I see some of you continuing your experiment. Even things out before you come back to rest. If you had revelations on the right side, you should try to make the same ones on the left. And you understand, now I'm going to ask you to move support under those thighs. Nobody is taking support. So I'm going to ask you to now put in blankets or bricks, anything that those bones can rest on. And hopefully symmetrical on both sides. Blankets, blocks. Worst case scenario, you make a fist and you put your fist underneath. You put your fist underneath that thigh. That might be enough, but that's a distraction. Point being, support under those thighs, even for those with flexible hips, changes the breath. Does it not? Everything you do interacts with the breath. So maybe makes sense to you that you don't start doing this subtle manipulation of the breath until you are much more aware of the breath and its basic shape in your body and how your posture can limit or free the breath. And we've just looked at the body element in its relation to the breath. But just sit here in Parakonasana and don't go all out, but think of just one. I don't want to make you go overboard, please, but think one negative thought and see what it does. What happens to the breath when you think of your beloved? what happens to your breath when you start thinking about reconciling your bank account. You see the layer that is, do you like looking at that or do you not like? But there's also the layer of numbers, counting, putting yourself in intellect mode. What happens to the breath? So the yogis, of course, practice cultivating thoughts that remove limitations. Not so subtle call to be happy. So please bring the legs together. Use your hands to help keep the pressure off the groins. And anybody who has stiffness in the groins, all I ask is that you watch its effect on your breath as you come out and see if you can stay safe. Now it's 9:02 and it's time for a supported shoulder stand or a supported setu banta. So if you're not going to put yourself in a chair with your shoulders on a bolster or blanket, you would do this close to a wall so your heels can rest on that wall. You put as much support underneath your shoulders as you need, and you make sure you pad the chair seat properly. Now, those who are not doing shoulder stand, those who need for one reason or another to do setu banta, do it with bolster support. I think everybody's going to shoulder stand. I'm not sure. So I'm going to stop talking. Run your arms in between those front chair legs, catch the back chair legs. See that the shoulders and at least the lower part of the neck, I'll say it differently, the curve of the neck should be at ease and supported by that bolster or blanket pile. So shoulders are back a little bit. Marsha, wait before you set those arms, Marsha. Pull them back out and move the bolster so it is close to the base of the skull. Move it away from the chair some more. Now that might be too much. So compromise. Bolster comes back slightly so the top of the head touches the floor. But yeah, good. Stop there. Stop. That might be too much, but what you're doing is you're seeing how is that breath in the ears? How is that breath in the mouth, ears, skull, throat, pit of the throat? All of those things that bolster is influencing, interacting with. And Marcia, if you were closer to the wall, the back of the knee wouldn't be on the chair getting annoyed, the foot would be higher up the wall, and it would be, I bet you, more pleasant. So I am hoping you are comfortable. Karen, can your arms go in between? Karen Carpenter, can the arms go in between the front chair legs and catch the back chair? If they can't reach to the back chair legs, you're not on the chair seat far enough and the chest isn't open. You should be able to have that contact. And I think it's because did you put your chair legs on the blankets? So that's why fold your blankets in half and build the same height support. Fold them in half lengthwise. Yes. 1, 2, 3. Or 1 or 2, because you see it's now twice the height. And if that was a little short, 3 is good. Don't use 4. Now bring that out away from the chair a bit. You have to imagine where your shoulders are going to land. And you're going to imagine that your hands go much farther through the chair. Karen, take your sticky mat on that chair seat and fold it in half. Put it on the edge. Now you double that padding. That is good. Now go for it. Nope. Feet over the top. Hook your ankles. There you go. 3 inches. Don't hang your knees down. Take your knees apart, hook your ankles, cross your ankles.
I'm not sure what you're...
That's it, just like that. Hook your heels. Now, head back, shoulders down. Down, arch your back, shoulders down. Run your arms through the front chair legs. Now, if that blanket is in an awful place, you move it in a bit closer. But if your neck is supported, head on the floor, your chest looks pretty good there. How do you feel?
Good.
Good.
This is the first time I've tried this at home, so thank you for talking me through it.
Okay, good. The point of this is breath. Now, those with feet at the wall, there is a big difference between putting the sole of the foot on the wall flat and turning so only the heel is at the wall. Stretching the back of the leg up so the heel goes up the wall in Sarvankasana. Okay. Bend your knees and just hold on to the chair seat with your feet. Unthread your arms and hold the chair from the outside. Hold the chair from the outside instead of from inside. Pull down on the chair, bending your elbows wide. Not shoulders wide, just elbows wide. Pull with the hands. Try to widen the chair, widen your armpits. And then if you've got balance, if you're going to stay in position and not slide, let your arms go out to the sides so the armpits open. If you will slide off your bolster, don't do it. Just hang on so you can relax. But if those arms can let go, let them go. And see how, yes, that's lovely, Marissa. Marissa's put her feet in Parakonasana on the back of the chair. So as the arms go wide, the legs go wide. She's doing an inverted Parakonasana. Soles the feet together. Yeah, let's say the outer foot touches. For some of you, this is pelvically very interesting. You'd think it'd be spacious, but things get a little squinchy feeling when the hips are tight. So observe yourself. It is time to come out. So slowly, arms hold the chair, feet touch that chair seat or a chair back as you slide out. And you slide quietly, let your hips rest on that blanket, Viparita Karani like. Now, for some of you, this is a most comfortable version of Shavasana. For others of you, you'll want to adjust, going flat or lowering a bolster or some blankets to make the pose, to make the breath soften up. The idea of Shavasana is to make it so that there is no conscious or unconscious thought of movement, planning for movement, remembering of movement. What you're left with is the automatic movements of life maintenance, heart rate, breathing, and more subtle things like digestive activities. But everything that is willful on your part, drop. This changes the breath. Remove your own intrinsic limitations on your life force. Like right now, you're nothing but life force. Circulating. Now, this is how I'd like to leave you in your Shavasana. I need to go to my next appointment, so I'm going to bow out. You should stay for a bit without me talking. You just listen. Namaskar.